Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking to Minna Hill. She's only 14 years old, almost 14. She's from Pakistan and she speaks English just like any American 14-year-old I know. So she is going to share her story today. Welcome, Minna Hill. First, tell us, how did you learn English so fluently? Do you think you have a natural talent for it, or was it a result of hard work, or perhaps a combination of both?
I'd say it was probably like a combination of both. I would say maybe I had a bit of a natural talent. I think for me, how it started was, I'll be honest, I have no idea when I actually started learning because you know how a child would pick up things in like any language, like in their native language usually as they grow. That was me. I grew up with like English movies or like shows. I loved reading fairy tales as a kid, music. So it was kind of like that was my environment for like, at least for me, when I was alone, it would be how I grew up. So I won't say I never actually like studied for it. Like I definitely did work on it as I grew up, but it definitely started as more of a natural talent, you could say, I guess, or just like as my environment. But as I grew, I did like, I wouldn't say I tried to formally like attend classes or anything like that, but I continued with like movies and my shows in English. I love to read. I've read a lot of books to the point I can now count how many. So if that counts as learning, I definitely did. I try focusing on my vocabulary, my pronunciation, because there's still a lot of stuff I would say I'm not good at. I'm not gonna say I'm perfect because I definitely am not. So you could say it's like a combination of both.
It sounds like you did a great job of surrounding yourself with English and making English part of your environment. So you live in Pakistan. Obviously, it's not
Yeah.
a native English speaking country. So do
Yeah.
your parents speak English? Were they part of helping you create this English environment?
I would say they definitely did support me. Like they never really forced me to not do it, or I will say I really had to cut off like a bunch of social interactions mostly because I'm not trying to be in any way negative, but it's kind of like people will maybe assume you're trying to be a little bit of a show off if you really continue that way. So I definitely tried cutting off social interactions with it. They did too, but they definitely supported me. But I think the person who mostly like helped me out with like speaking that way with me were me and my brothers. We usually grew up like speaking that way to each other, but apart from that, it was my aunt and my late uncle, so they definitely like helped out with that.
And what language do you speak at home with your family?
It's either Urdu or English. I prefer English. I feel like it's a little easier for me. Like I would most of the time I won't realize that I'm just gonna be start speaking Urdu, and I'll suddenly like go on into English, and then I'm gonna realize, oh wait, what am I doing? And then I'm gonna have to stop myself. So it's like a bit of both.
And what about in school? Do you go to school in English?
Most of our subjects we study are in English. Yes, there's only two subjects we have that are in Urdu. But apart from that, we do study, usually like have our course in English. But me personally, I just like to communicate in English. I always feel like it makes me feel a little more like me than I do when I'm speaking my native language. So personally, for me, yeah.
That's interesting. And why do you think you relate more to English than you do your own native language?
That's a very interesting question. That's something I often wonder myself. Because, like, you would expect most people to feel a little more confident speaking the native language. But for me, it's the opposite. My friends often ask me to try to, like, speak in my native language because I have never, like, to most of my friends, I have never actually spoken in my native language. So they're often asking me, and I go, I can't. It makes me nervous. So I think it was just the way I grew up, like, around everything in English, like my books and my shows. I'll be honest. I think like books, I'm a very extroverted person, but books are kind of like books and fictional characters are my best friends. So you can see I kind of grew up surrounding myself in the environment. So it just makes me feel a little more comfortable.
And how about your friends? You mentioned they want to speak in Urdu, your native language. So are they more confident in their native language compared to English, or do they communicate as fluently, as naturally as you do in English? How would you compare that?
I will say, like, I personally feel like they're a little more confident. I'm not trying to judge anyone. Like, it's up to them how they feel. I do feel like they're a little more confident in the native language. I won't say they're like as fluent, but I also feel like they have the potential to be if they tried to. But for the most part, they're definitely maybe a little more confident in my native language. If any of you are watching, please do not take this offensively. I'm just trying to be honest.
Absolutely. And for sure, for all the friends watching, just know language learning is a journey. I'm sure if you probably have skills that are higher than Manahil in certain areas as well. So
Definitely.
we all have our own unique skills and talents. So tell me, how do you feel about the English you learn in a classroom? Do you have English classes where you sit down and learn the English language in a classroom setting? And how do you feel about that compared to the English that you hear on TV, in your books that you like to read, English in the real world?
Yeah, we do have an English class. Like we've got English like almost every day of the week. So I will say the English in textbooks and in classrooms is certainly very different from like IRL English. Just because I think most of the things you learn in a classroom, I often ask myself, when am I ever going to need all this in like a normal day setting? I feel like movies and like other books you would read, like maybe a little more like nonfiction or even fiction, just like textbook English and like novel English are like two different things from the way I see it. So I feel like movie English in movies or books, it's definitely a little more relatable to your daily life than it could be to textbooks. So that's just my opinion. I just feel like it is.
Well, it's certainly done wonders for you because you speak, as I said in the introduction, you speak like any 13, 14-year-old American girl, including how fast you speak. For the audience watching, just know that how fast she's speaking, this is often how fast younger kids speak. I know I used to speak very, very quickly when I was 13 as well. So, but your vocabulary, the expressions that you use, your pronunciation, it sounds just like a North American 14-year-old girl. So,
Thank you.
did you learn all of these expressions and pronunciation in school, or was that just from being absorbed to the content, the movies, the TV shows, the books? How do you think you did it?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think a little more from like textbooks. It was definitely more from like the content I used to watch as a kid or like I used to read. I just used to like indulge myself in. Cause I feel like accent, it's definitely something you can build, but at the same time, it's also like something that comes in naturally. Like I feel like if somebody like a non-native speaker was to try to learn my native language, their pronunciation would definitely be a lot different from like the way I say it or the way my family or just like people living in Pakistan say it. So I definitely feel like that's where my accent came from. I didn't necessarily have to try to learn it. It just like came from the way I always saw it, heard it being pronounced in my shows or books or like the way I read it in books. So that's, I definitely think mine just came in naturally.
Yeah, it's amazing that you say that. And for all the students watching, if you learn pronunciation from a native speaker like Manahil did, then you will be able to pronounce the sounds. So that imitation is so important. And you're living proof of the results that you get because it is just absolutely amazing hearing you speak. Now, let's talk
Thank
about your
you.
speaking skills because you may know that a lot of people learning English as a second language, they struggle with their speaking skills. They get quite confident with grammar, vocabulary, reading, writing, but then when it comes to speaking, they don't have the same level of skill. But clearly your speaking skills are absolutely excellent. So how did you personally improve your speaking skills?
I feel like I'm sure you said this in your videos once, but you know how when you're writing it down or like you're reading, it's like no one's actually listening to you say it, so you're a little more confident in like doing it right. But when you try to say it in front of and someone, especially like a native speaker, you suddenly just feel anxious and you start and your mind just goes, "What if I make mistakes?" or like, "What if I mess this up?" That's some things like that. I'll be honest, that happened to me like it used to when I was younger. But now growing up, like I've been a lot more confident with this. I feel like that's I'm more nervous if I speak my native language. Those are the thoughts that run through my mind speaking my native language than they do speaking English. So I think one thing is just don't let yourself become anxious, or like don't fear making mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes. We're all human beings. That happens. Just don't be worried about like if I mess this up, is someone gonna judge me? If they do, I say let them. That's what people are going to do. So don't worry about people's opinions. If you're doing it, you're doing it for yourself. You should be doing it for yourself. So like you don't have to worry about that. If like I think a tip to improve your speaking skills, something that definitely worked for me is speak to yourself. It doesn't even have to be like formally. You don't have to be sitting in front of a mirror. So one thing I do, this is more of a habit of mine at this point, but I'd be like reading a book, I'll be watching a movie or like a TV show, and something's gonna happen, and I'm gonna stick there for 5 minutes rambling to myself on and on and on about the situation. I could be alone in the room or in the house, and I'll still keep going. So it's for me, it's become more of a habit. I can't stop myself from it. So I do definitely think don't be nervous about doing that. It's like normal. It definitely helped me. So just like try speaking to yourself first. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. It happens. Just like relax yourself. Just speak. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. It's completely fine. If you want to, like you can always, like I said, you can, if you're like preparing for something, like you're preparing for a speech or like an interview, you can always stand in front of the mirror, try to practice it, or like you can it can eventually build into a habit like it did for me. But as you're reading, as you're listening, you should just let yourself express your opinions and ideas, even if it's just you. You don't have to have someone there with you to speak to. You can always speak to yourself.
I'm so glad you said that. And that's definitely advice I share with all my students. And that is what I do as well. I speak to myself all the time. It's a great way to prepare, it's a great way to practice. And when I was learning foreign languages, I always spoke to myself in that foreign language because I didn't have access to other people, but I always had access to myself. So it's just an
Yeah.
easy thing to do. And I'm glad you do
Uh-huh.
that. And I'm glad you recommend it as well. Now, because your English is so amazing and you're only almost 14, for those of you watching, she's going to be 14 in just 1 week. She let me know. So almost 14. Happy early birthday. Because
Thank
your
you.
English is so amazing, are you done learning? Do you still sit down and formally learn the language, or do you feel you've achieved the result that you want with your English skills?
No, I don't think, I'm not gonna say I'm done learning. I don't ever want to be like done with it, because I think this, I will definitely say there's a difference between when you have to learn something like you don't want to, and there's something you want to learn, something you want to do for yourself. So that's definitely like me and English. Like if I'd say if it was like something like if it was a school subject, maybe a subject I didn't necessarily like, I definitely would be like, okay, I'm done learning this. This is all I'll ever need. I'm done. But I feel like this is something I'm not gonna be done with. I'm definitely going to continue. I like I said, I never actually formally tried to learn it. I just more of I went with it. So I definitely, when I say I'm not done learning, it's in a sense that I still like to read. I still like to watch movies or shows in it. Sometimes I like open up a dictionary and look for words. Sometimes I like to search up synonyms of words I feel like I use a lot. So I'll try to like search up synonyms, try to replace the words with something a little different. It always helps like with vocabulary and pronunciation too, and writing, speaking. I feel like it just helps a lot. So yeah, I don't think I'm done.
Good answer, because we are all lifelong learners. We should never stop learning. So I'm glad you're committed to keep improving, keep learning. And I asked you that just because a lot of students, they really want to know, okay, when is that timeline in the future that I will be fluent and therefore done with English? That seems to be what they have. There's going to be some date in the future, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, where they're done with English. They're fluent. They've achieved the result. They can move on with their life. But I still learn new words, new
Yeah.
ways to communicate, better ways to share my ideas. And I'm a native speaker, so I'm
Yeah.
glad you're committed to that lifelong learning as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm.
Excellent.
There's just like you can never be done with it. If you think you're done, well, you're actually done for. Like that's it. You're gonna forget what you learned like 6 months later. That's just over for you. All that work just goes to waste.
What a clever thing to say. If you think you're done for.
You're done
Because
for.
in English, to be done for means like you're
It's
finished,
over for you.
you're not successful anymore, you're
Yeah.
out of the game, you're done for. So that's a very clever phrasing. I love that. So
Thank you.
you're only 14, you have this high level of English. Do you think this will help you in your future? What do you see yourself doing in the future, and what role do you feel that English is going to play in that, and why is it important for you to improve your English skills?
I definitely think it's gonna help me a lot. Like I said, I'm a very extroverted person, so I feel like some of my goals for the future are career wise, I want to be an interior designer when I grow up. So I feel like that's something you're definitely going to have to communicate with people from all over the world. You might not speak their native language. So I think if you, especially if you want to, if your like career path is something that you feel like you're going to have to interact with a bunch of people from like different countries, different parts of the world, it's definitely something that can help you because like you can't always learn everyone's native language. As in the same way, I really want to travel the entire world, like every single place I can possibly go to, I want to go. So again, I cannot learn all those languages, so English will definitely like help communicate with people. Apart from that, I really just think it's like something I have fun with. Like I just love to read. I mean, extroverts and bookworms are two different things, but I'm just like merged into one. So that definitely helps. I love to just like books always help enhance my vocabulary and all that. And I I hope this isn't off track, but I love K-pop. So I hope I can meet some of my favorite idols one day. And I don't know if I'll like manage to learn Korean till then. So maybe that will help. So there's a lot of things I definitely think English can help me with in the future.
Well, you never know where English can take you. And if you do meet one
Yep.
of them, most likely you'll speak in English more than Korean. So there you go. Now English will be your doorway into meeting them. I hope that
Yeah, I
happens
hope
for
so.
you.
Me too.
Now, interestingly, we're having this interview because your mom sent me an email because your mom is a regular viewer of my videos.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, mom. So, and she said that I should interview you because you have a great
Yeah.
story to share. But then from that, I learned that your mom is also learning English, of course. So, how would you compare your mom's experience learning English and trying to become confident with English compared to your experience with the English language?
There's definitely a big difference between my mom learning it and me because she definitely is like trying to formally learn it, something I didn't do. So that already is like a big difference. And me and my mom are like 4 decades apart. She was 40 when I was born. So I feel like the resources I had learning and like the resources she might have had if she was trying to learn at the age I was would have been a lot different. So like that generation gap already is like a big difference. You could tell the difference. So now that she's much older, I feel like she might just have a little less of an opportunity to speak now. She's also like she's not the most extroverted person, so she might just not have a lot of opportunities to use her English. She just has to like formally learn it because she just like didn't try to. When she was like maybe younger, she wouldn't have had the resources she has now or the resources I had when I was learning. So it definitely there's a big difference. She still might maybe like struggles with a few things. She like often needs to search them up. I definitely think she's improving a lot, but there's a big difference between her and me. So like she might still be a little more hesitant speaking than I am. So yeah.
And what advice would you give to your mom and all the other viewers in the same situation where they're older, they started learning English at a time when the resources weren't available, the style was very different, more formal, studying from textbooks, and
Yeah.
they're still struggling today. What advice would you give to that person just like your mom?
Well, one thing, don't just like stop, because I don't want anyone to think, okay, when am I like at this age, at this point in life, when am I ever going to need it again? So like, don't just stop learning. And it's definitely like there's a lot of different ways to learn. Some people definitely try to learn from textbook. I remember reading this book called Effortless English. It's definitely had like a few things I agree with. So I will say, like, you can always like try to study grammar or read textbooks, but like don't try to just completely indulge yourself in like textbook English and grammar. You should like I said, I learned from like just reading and like listening. So I will say also, sometimes textbook English just might not be exactly what you want to learn from. Try to do things that interest you. Like there's a specific topic that interests you, like you're into music or you're into news, you're into a specific genre. You can always continue that, but in the language you're trying to learn. And also, like I definitely know the world we live in, people are often like they're gonna be judgmental of a lot of things. They're gonna be like, okay, like why do you need this and why do you need to do that? That's something that really annoys me. So just don't listen to them. Just try to just do what you want. You're never too old to like learn something new or to try something new. You're never too old to like do something. I know some like this might seem a little off topic, but you know how people say, okay, Barbies are for little girls. That I'm 14 and I watch Barbie movies. I will still gladly have a whole collection of Barbies. So like you're never too old for anything. Do what you want. Let people say what they want. It doesn't matter. You can like listen to them and then forget they ever said anything. It's not their business. It's your life. You do what you want.
Such a wise perspective to have at such a young age. I'm so glad you said that, and it's so true. And also, like you said, it's finding a way of learning that is unique to you and that you enjoy, because
Yeah.
we all have different learning styles. We all have different interests. The way you learn
Yeah.
is not going to work for someone else. So find the
For
way
everyone
that
else.
works for you. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing all your tips and advice.